Thank you so much, brother. All right. Thank you, Cam. I appreciate it. Give it up for Cam, by the way, please. Give it up for Cam. All right. We're going to have some fun today. Turn to your neighbor and say, "You look good." Turn to your other neighbor and say, "I look good." Now turn to anybody who you want and say, "I look better." Now, then what? We don't know. That's up for interpretation. You know what I mean? Guys, everybody's like, "Yeah, I do look better now that we're talking about this." No. Guys, my name is Mike Fritz. I get to do this and talk to you guys all, talk to students throughout the country. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to take that next step in your level of leadership. But before I get started, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever been on a really bad date? Yeah, date. How many of you have been on a bad date? Oh, most of you have. Let me ask you this. At the end of that date, somebody walks up to you at the end of that date and says, "You know, tonight was awful. I kind of feel like I had something to do with that. Why don't we get married?" You'd be like, "What the psycho?" No, absolutely not. Now, let me ask you a question. Why not? A bad experience will never elicit another one, correct? Here's the thing with leadership. Most people don't understand. Leading people is about creating unforgettable experiences so they want to follow you again. You got me? You understand that? Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you remember your first date? First date you ever went on? Oh, man. I remember my first date. Oh, by the way, this is DNA of leadership. I remember my first date, 6th grade. I asked a girl to recess. That's right. That's what I look like, ladies and gentlemen. Asked a girl to recess. That's what I'm talking about. But don't you worry right now, because that right there grew into that sexy beast. Oh, deal with it. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You all need to stop undressing me with your eyes. You know what I'm talking about? All right. Oh, I went on my first date in 6th grade. So I walk up to this girl, and this is the pickup line I used. And I leaned into her, which apparently is a bit more intimidating, and I went, "I've noticed you." She's like, "What, from the bushes, you psycho?" Right? But she agreed to go on that date with me, and I'll guarantee it was the greatest first date that's ever existed in the history of dating. Now you're like, "Mike, chill. How do you know your date's the best date that's ever existed?" I've been married to her for 18 years. For real. I've been married to her for 18 years. She is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. But how many of you have ever dated somebody that's exactly the opposite from you? Like, they are totally different. You know what I'm talking about? Like, let me do a quick survey. Where are my cool, calm, collected people? Like, not much shakes you. A lot of you. Wow. I love that. Like, you know what I mean? Like for example, we could be in this session. The person next to you could keel over, and you'd be like, "Continue." You know, like, not much shake. Well, that's my wife. My wife is so cool, calm, collected. Our house could be burning down, and she'd be updating Instagram. She would. She'd be like, "Oh, house is burning down. Didn't see that one coming. Hashtag gonna die, selfie." Like that. That's my wife. Like, that's just how she rolls. And here is a picture of me. Like, I am everything but cool, calm, collected. But just in case you think, how many of you are weird and you know it? Yes, that's me. I'm weird. But don't you worry. In case you're weird, I am at a 45-degree angle, apparently yelling something at this girl's ear. I'm absolutely crazy, but that guy right there married her. Yeah, she is the greatest person that's ever existed. She's everything to me. But let me ask you a question. How many of you would like to find somebody in this life that's just crazy enough to spend the rest of their life with you? All right, most of you are like, "Yeah, I want to find that." Good. Now let me ask you one more question. How many of you would like to skip past all the "are we right for each other" and you just know who that's supposed to be? Oh, a lot of you are like, "I want to know." Like, you know what I mean? Like, we just know it's them. Like, for example, you come to a leadership conference this weekend, you're sitting down, somebody walks in you've never seen before, and it's just like, you know what I'm talking about? We could just know. I love it. I would love to just know. Ladies and gentlemen, as I told you, hey, I don't know what that's all about. My name is Mike Fritz. I get to talk to you about leader. Turn to your neighbor and say, "It's time to be a leader." Absolutely. Let me ask, how many of you are, at some point in your life, would like to make an impact on people? Raise your hand. You want to make an impact? Let me just tell you, I want to warn you real quick about making an impact. I was at this school one time, and I spoke to this school, and apparently I had an impact because they had me back the next year, and I went back and did another conference for them, and I walked up, and this student started walking towards me, and he walks up to me, and he goes, "Hey, you had an impact on me." I'm like, "Sorry." What he did next, I was never prepared for and could never prepare for. He says, "I have something for you." He leans down, he unzips his bag, and he pulls out a sculpture of my head. Yeah, that'll change your day, ladies and gentlemen. He handed me my head. He goes, "Here." I'm like, "What the mother of all that is psycho?" And I'm looking at my head. I'm like, "What the?" And then he hands it to me. And he says, "You can have it." And then he walks away and he says the most murderous thing that's ever been uttered by a human. He goes, "You can have it. I can make more." What the? Yeah. Impacting people will change the game. Today I'm going to teach you to be an influencer. I'm going to teach you specifically, if you want to make a difference in people's lives, this is where to be. You could be all kinds of different places today, but you're here. Turn to your neighbor and say, "Good job." Today is a day. See, here's the thing. What I've learned about leaders is they usually aren't following the pack. They step outside of the pack and they do things that are maybe a little bit more uncomfortable. They do things a little bit differently. And that's you. Today I'm going to walk you through a couple things that will set you apart. When you walk into a job interview, when you walk into a position of influence that you either want to get a job or maybe you want to take a role on campus, how you do that is everything. See, a lot of people focus on what to say in interviews, but they never focus on how to say. For example, think about this for a minute. Just watch this. I want this job. Versus, I want this job. See, I've said the same thing. It's different, right? How you say is even more important in leadership than what you say. I'm going to give you 10, if we have time, things. I will probably break them up between this session and the next session to make sure I can walk through them all with you. I'm going to give you things today that I believe if you implement, you need to say goodbye to your former life. It'll change you that much. It'll position you to be a person you could never be without this content, because it's changed my life that way. The very first thing I want to talk to you about this morning is personal development. Every single leader understands the power of personal development. In fact, can I tell you this? Your leadership, I want you to think of your personal development as a ceiling. Your leadership will always hit that ceiling. You can never grow as a leader past your personal development. For example, let's say you need to grow in your communication interpersonally, one-on-one. And until you grow in that, you'll always trip over that goal of communication. Or maybe you struggle to speak in public. Until we get better at that, you'll keep tripping over that in your leadership. So what I want you to do, see, personal development is broken up into two categories. How many? Two categories. One category is character. The second category is skill. What I want you to do right now, I want you to write down an area you would like to develop in character and skill. Now, let me give you an example real quick before you write. A character is like, I want to grow in my integrity. When I say something, I want to mean it. I want to follow through every time. Maybe you struggle with that. Or I want to be a better friend. I don't want to talk behind people's backs. I want to have their back, not talk behind their back, right? Maybe I want to grow in that. Maybe I want to grow in my ability to be on time. Can I tell you something real quick? Punctuality is the equivalent of integrity. Because if I tell you I'm going to be somewhere at 4 and I'm somewhere at 4:10, I told you that the 10 minutes that I was late, that part of your life didn't matter to me. So I took that 10 minutes. By the way, all you have is time. So when you take time from somebody and you don't give the value that you promised, you are ripping away time, and it begins to erode the foundation of your word. Now, the next time you say, I'm going to be here at 5, I'm going to be like, but are they? So maybe you say, I want to grow in my ability to be on time. That's character. Now, skill might be, I want to grow in my ability to manage my time. I want to grow in my ability, maybe to speak in public. How many of you would like to be a better public speaker? A lot of you, right? Yeah. By the way, did you guys know public speaking is the #1 fear in the world, by the way, above death? I'm like, ease up. Like, hey, we want you to speak this weekend at the banquet. No, thanks. Just shoot me. Like, what the heck? like, what is wrong with people, right? You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, let's take a breather, Hoss. I think we got this. You know what I mean? But people, why do you think public speaking is so, people are so afraid of it? Why do you think? Right here.
I think people have a fear of being judged.
Absolutely. What's your name?
Cheryl
Shara
Maxwell.
Maxwell. That's absolutely right. We have a fear of being judged. Can I tell you something? The fear of being judged will always set the speed limit of your success. You hear me? So your fear will always hold you back from risk. So last time, if you got your heart broken in a relationship and the right person walks into your life and you're like, you know what, I just don't want to go through, I just got hurt, your fear of protection will keep you away from the greatest things of life. You hear me? It's like that everywhere. You know, when you're walking, you see somebody, do you know this is the power of a room? Do you know you could be in the room with somebody right now whose brother, uncle, dad, sister, mom owns the company that you should work for? Nobody ever thinks about that. Oh, this is just my friends. My friends, this is your network. And your network will always determine your net worth. And so we have to grow in our ability to understand relationships are not utilitarian. Means I'm not here to just use you to get from you. What I'm here is I'm going to here to add as much value to your life to break open that relationship and see what comes spilling out. Okay? So here's what I'm talking about, personal development. Character, skill. What are some areas you guys want to grow in? Character, skill. Character, again, that's that internal stuff. That's who we are. Skill, that's what we do, right? I mean, there's difference, by the way, in a talent and a skill. Talents are things like you were born with. How many of you, there's something like you were good at from an early age? Could be music, could be art. Like you've seen somebody, man, when they sing, oh my goodness, the room shuts up. It's like, oh my, and then sometimes when people sing, you're like, oh, no, we're not going to, no, we're not going to do that again, are we? Right? So you understand there's those people that just have that talent. Some people are like athletic, man. They're a little kid and they can throw and they can run and they're just athletic. And some people, they can't catch cold in a blizzard. It's just the way it is, right? So the point is, what I want you guys to do is I want you to not necessarily look at talent, but skill. Skill. What do you want to grow in? Like what you do, skill, and who you are, character. Now I want you to go ahead and write that down. Hit it. I'll just give you a few minutes just to get a few things on paper. You guys should have a little notebook there you got when you checked in. Right, a few things you want to grow, and they can be more than one, but I like to limit it to one because sometimes when we put a big list down, we don't work on anything. Okay? Character and skill. And then what I want you to do after you have those down, I want you to share it with people at your table. Now, let me just tell you, if the character is a little close to your heart, like that's something like I don't really want to reveal, just talk about the skill. But I also want to tell you, invulnerability is where relationships are built. So being vulnerable will create friends and bring people closer to you. One of the most powerful things you can do is live your life as an open book and say, this is what I'm working on. I'll tell you what, you'd be amazed at the number of friends you'll build and the depth that they will go by being vulnerable with people. For example, this is one of the reasons I hate Facebook is because it's redefined what the word friend means. It's taught us that a friend is a click away. It's not. It's a lifetime of effort and a whole lot of time. You got that? Okay, so start sharing at the table of just what are some things you want to grow in? What are some things in your heart? Man, I want to grow here. I want to grow here. It could be specific to your career, to your major. It could be specific to relationships or whatever. Go ahead. Hit it. And then you can start sharing at the table. You're probably not a closed book with those friends. Share a little bit about what you want to grow. Now that you've kind of talked a little bit at your table, since we don't have a ton of time, I'm just going to cut it a little short. Who'd be willing to share some things you guys want to? Right here. And what's your name? Janaya. Everybody say hi, Janaya. Hi, Janaya. And what are some things you'd like to develop? Ooh, good. Excellent. Excellent. Procrastination and manage time. How many of you like to procrastinate? Right. The rest of you will raise your hand tomorrow. Anyway. So anyway. But you're absolutely right. Procrastination. By the way, cool thing about time management. One of the reasons, time management is the #1 genre of book purchased in the United States every single year. More time management books are sold than any other category of book in the nonfiction world. And here's why. You don't manage time. My friends, 24 hours will click by whether you sit and watch Netflix or change the world. Time is unmanageable. We have so many people trying to manage time. Here's what you do. You manage priority. You don't manage time. Every day you wake up and you say, what are the 3 things that are going to take me closer to my goal? If you do that, time management works its way out. It's priority management rather than time management. Does that make sense? And let me tell you something. The #1 reason why people don't get a lot done is because they don't follow this. So I'll tell them, you got to manage by priority. But then they'll go away and they'll be like, manage by priority. But what should I do first? Do you know why people don't know that? Because they don't have any goals. Without a finish line, you don't know where the hell to run. So here's the point. Until you set a goal, you have no idea what priorities should be on your plate the next day, right? We have no idea where we're headed. And so the point is, and my wife is like this. See, like my wife and I are both runners. We love to run. But she's like I call a spirit runner. She just wants to get out on the road and let the spirit lead. Oh, hell no. She's like, you want to go for a run? I'm like, sure. How long are we going? We'll just find out. Yeah, we'll find out before we start is when we'll find out. You know what I mean? But the truth of the matter is, without a finish line, we don't know where to go. And we'll do this in a little bit of setting some goals and understanding that. But one of the reasons why we struggle with time management so much is because, #1, we're not managing by priority. And even if we're going that deep, we're like, well, what priorities hit the list? It's because we don't have any goals set to tell us what priorities should hit the list. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Something else. Somebody else. Yes. And what's your name? Leah. Leah? Everybody say, hey, Leah. Hey, Leah. Oh, great. Fantastic. Fantastic. Communication. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And would you say communication one-on-one or one-to-many? One-to-many. Yep, good. Fantastic. That's great. Yeah. And what's your name? My name's Cab? Did you say? Cal. Okay. First, when you left, I thought he's like, I don't want to tell him my name. Okay. All right, go ahead, Cal. What do you want? What do you have? Character or public speaking and vulnerability. By the way, you know what's interesting about that list? Public speaking, the reason it's such a fear is because it's such a state of vulnerability. So that's interesting that those 2 things landed on the same list, right? Because speaking up in front of people, you're pretty vulnerable up here, right? You have twice as many eyes as people usually, and anyway. But the whole point is, when you stand up here, you do open yourself up to a lot of judgment. You know the beautiful thing about judgment? Judgment is the poison we drink hoping somebody else dies. See, I judge you hoping that it hurts you, but judgment never hurts them. It only hurts me. Right? You got me? Sure. No. So she asked me to say that again. So here's the thing with judgment. I judge somebody for 2 reasons. I judge somebody because I want what they have. So I envy something in them. I envy their courage. I envy I judge them because I want what they have. And the second thing is I'm judging them hoping it will stop them from doing what they're doing so my insecurities aren't revealed. So the truth is, judgment is the poison we drink hoping somebody else dies. You understand? Yes, sir. So here's what I always say. So this is a great question Cal asked. What if they're just not good? When you see somebody that's not either good at their craft or good, let me tell you what you do. You never judge, you think development. What could they do to get better? They might be able to implement this and implement this and implement this. Do you know every comedian you watch on YouTube has bombed way more times than they have succeeded on stage? So if they were like, well, they're not good, yeah, they're not. Adam Sandler is in a club, probably 30 years ago. He's in a club. He's in a little comedy club with like 10 people. Nobody's laughing at his jokes. And he goes, I don't know, maybe I'll be rich one day. And they literally boot him off stage. And now we watch his movies, right? The point is, every single person, when you see somebody that's not good, yeah, they might not be good in that moment, could have had a bad day, but instead of judging, think, man, how could I, in any way, shape, or form, help them get better? Maybe you know somebody that specializes in helping people with the skills they're trying to develop. You connect them. Instead of judging, we think development, right? So great question, Cal. Somebody else. Yeah, right here.
So for my character, I said I want to be a more nonchalant person. Like everything hurts me, so I care way too much about things that I shouldn't.
Sure, that's really good. That's really good. Kind of saving your emotions to invest in what really matters, right, into your heart. Good, good, very good. And what?
My skill is,
that's fantastic.
I want to get over the fear of feeling like I can't be in certain positions. Like you see how people could be on S.G.A, I don't feel like I don't feel like I would ever be in that position because I don't feel smart enough.
Sure.
I feel like I won't get it.
So let me tell you something. Every builder that doesn't have any tools fears building a house. And it's not that you just need tools. Today's a big step. You'll get so many things today that if you start implementing into your life, you're probably a whole lot more ready than you realize now. But let me tell you something about those organizations, because those are two specific organizations that you mentioned that I work with year-round. Those organizations are not people that have made it. Those organizations are people that are committed to making it. You understand what I mean? And you've got advisors in the room right now. Ask them that. Say, am I ready for this? They'd be like, absolutely. Now, where you come into an organization, I don't want you to stay there. I want you to keep getting better, of course. But you're ready today. Because let me tell you something. I'll take any day somebody who's willing to work hard versus somebody who has the already talent. Oh, hell no. I'll take the hard worker any day. And they'll pass them 4 times over. Because, lack of knowledge is what creates fear. So when you don't know, well, what would I do in this situation? It creates fear and it holds you from investing. Well, you know what you'll do in that situation? If you get in a situation you don't know what to do, you'll go to your advisor, you go to other people, guys, what did you do in this situation? And you figure it out together. That's how we grow. So don't fear that. Lack of knowledge creates fear. Instead, say, you know what? I just have some more skills. Getting involved in this will help me develop the skills, right? You'll never get welcomed into a company that doesn't expect you to grow, ever. So please, please, please. By the way, I feel like S.G.A is voicing what many of us feel a lot of the times. I don't want to get involved in that because what if I fail? Let me tell you something. Make sure you do. Because if you're not failing, you're not running fast enough. You hear me? You hear me? Failure is the step to the top, my friend. That's what we do. People think failure goes down. Yeah. Tell Jim Carrey that the night he got booed off stage in Los Angeles and went up to the top of the mountain. And he looked over Los Angeles and he had almost out of gas. He had, I think it was 17 cents in his pocket. He had no money in the bank, had no money. And he wrote himself on the top of that hill a $10 million check. He'd never seen $10,000. Wrote himself a $10 million check on top of that hill. Went home that night, taped it to his refrigerator, and stared at it every day in the 80s. It's no wonder in the 1990s he was called Hollywood's $20 million man. Make sure you do fail. Because it's only in failure that you're created to be a giant. You hear me? Okay. All right, somebody else. Yeah, right back here. Okay. Great. Excellent. Excellent. And that is an art. Communication is both science and art. There are things that you should say in all situations, but there's also an art of how you massage your words so that it does, because it doesn't offend people, because I think one of the reasons, I'm so sorry, I think one of the reasons that we have such a, if I could just be real, I've decided I'm going to be real on every campus I go to. I think one of the reasons we have such a politically charged environment right now is because we have everybody screaming and nobody's saying anything. And nobody's listening. And so instead, I think my thoughts and my prayers is that this generation will raise up and say, hey, we've got this left and right crap. What if we just all became one person and said, how do we figure out the greatest problems that solve our world? That'll never happen if we don't care about how to massage and find the radical middle ground that cares about people. That'll never happen. And it's because we have so many people screaming and nobody listening. Good, I love it. Right here. I saw another hand right over here. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. I run into you again. Okay, good, excellent, good. You guys see, here's why I do this. The reason I have you guys write those couple things down is because development doesn't happen by accident. Most people try to grow by default, not design. Design says I get up every day and my goal is to become better at X, fill in the blank. And without that, if I walked up to you and said, do you have anything to work on? You'd all be like, so many things. Well, what are you working on? Everything. What does that mean? Nothing. That's exactly right. So if I was to walk up to you and say, what are you working on? Well, this semester, I'm trying to get better at public speaking, and I'm trying to make 3 connections that have maybe an internship that I can connect with. All of a sudden, not only you have people of influence ask you that question and you are able to give those answers, it puts you in a whole different category. Watch this. You walk into a job interview. Use this trick, by the way. You walk into a job interview and they'll say, what's your greatest weaknesses? Well, right now, I'm specifically working, and you list these 2 things. The character I'm working is I want to make sure that I can say things in a way that encourages and not offends people. And the second thing is I want to speak to a group of people and be able to inspire them. A job interviewer hears that with that level of specificity and that quick, because you don't come up with that kind of stuff on the spot. You have to think about it a minute. And so when you come up with that, and I'm like, wow, they really know it. They've been thinking about this. All of a sudden it tells me I've got a developer on my hands, meaning they want to develop themselves. It's going to put you in a whole new category. This is why I do this, because one of the things that we're taught in this world, that lack of development, like deficiencies in development, like I'm not there yet, is a bad thing. Like we're supposed to be born with this stuff. That's one of the things I hate about the discussion of leadership. How many of you have ever been told in your life you're a leader? Okay, you've been lied to, and let me tell you why. I know, and I know it's a demotivational speak. Just stick with me, and you'll see why. How many of you, be honest, and I'll raise my hand first, were told you're a leader when you weren't acting like one? So it sounded something like this. You did something stupid, and somebody's like, come on, you're a leader, act like it. How many of you did that? Yeah. Okay, so at least to half the room, people are like, yeah, let me tell you something. If you're not acting like a leader, you're not. So here's what people say. You're a leader. That's a noun. Leadership isn't a noun, it's a verb. Leadership is not a title. Oh, you're a leader. Why? Because you said so, even though I don't have to do anything? See, let me tell you, there are no such thing as leaders. There's only people who lead. Leader's a title. People who lead is a verb. There's a lot of people you'd never say are leaders that are impacting people you'll never know. So some of you might be like, well, I'm that quiet person in the corner. Great. Lead the quiet people in the corner. My point is, I am way past believing this stupid lie that leaders are born. Bull, that's wrong. And here's why. Because that teaches you that there's this little chip that's placed within you at birth, and if you don't have that chip, you're not a leader, and if you do, you are. Bull crap. I was told by 3 coaches that I was a second man. I was not built to be a leader. At age 18, I started my first business. I grew that and sold it at age 24 and able to step foot on a college campus for the first time at age 25. I paid for my entire $150,000 education with the liquidation of a company at age 24. Not a leader, though. Wrote my first book at age 30 and became a national speaker. Not a leader, though. Really? Because somebody else said so? My friends, don't believe that chip bull crap that it's placed within you. No, leadership is a developed skill It's not something you're given at birth. It just isn't. It just isn't. I'm just telling you. It is not. I can tell you over and over and over, stories over and over again of the person that was awkward and nobody really could connect to, and then they invented the light bulb. You know what I mean? So that's what I want you guys to understand is don't believe this stuff of you're not a leader or maybe you're quiet or whatever. And don't believe the lie just because somebody's charismatic and has a loud voice and is always talking that they're a leader. Usually those are the dumbest people. And I say that because I've had to fight that in my own personality. My own personality is always to talk. Can I tell you something real quick? The moment you start talking, 100% of the time you are talking, you won't be learning. When you start talking, 100% of your development is put on hold. The only time you can develop is when you're not talking. I don't care what religious book you follow, all of them talk about listening and speaking and the ratio that should be applied. You should listen. We're given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? I want you guys to understand that development doesn't happen by accident. It's not by default, it's by design. And by giving you guys these things that you just put on your paper, you now have handles, I call them. Now when you walk out of here, you have something to hold on to. Said, if nothing else changes, these 2 things, I'm going to put on my fridge or I'm going to put on my laptop or whichever I open more. Anyway, my point is, I'm going to be staring at these every single day because I don't want, next year, I don't want to be the same person. In fact, if I don't see somebody for 6 months, when they meet me, my goal is for them to not recognize who I am. I'm kinder. I listen better. I have more to offer in a conversation because in 6 months, you can do a lot of growth. Okay? So personal development, absolutely massive. Personal development. Okay? Number 2, we have to focus. So the first thing is leadership, the DNA of leadership. The first thing that runs through the DNA of a leader is that they're always growing and changing. Always. The second thing is they focus on other success. Zig Ziglar, one of my mentors that I never got to meet, he passed away in 2012, but I had so much of his content online and his books, and he was one of the greatest mentors in my life. He used to say this, you can get anything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Let me ask you a question. Let's say Cam. Cam is the place you go. If you wanna become successful, whatever that means to you, and everybody that talks to Cam seems to become successful. Their grades seem to go up. They get the job. Every time you're talking to Cam, he has the ideas that make you more successful. Can I ask you a question? How long of a line at Cam's door will there be? Right? So the whole point is when you get absolutely obsessed about helping lift people up and grow, you'll never be without people to help, without money. You just won't. That's just how it works. We have to focus on other success. So I'm going to give you the truth of leadership. Okay? So a leader's job is not to stand on the pedestal so people see them, right? Right? We understand that. So a lot of people say, no, the leader's job is to help their followers up on the pedestal. The leader's job is to be the pedestal. So it's upon your efforts, thoughts, time, people stand on your shoulders. And when the entire crowd looks at your efforts and what you've accomplished, all they see is the people following you. They don't even see you. That's leadership. You ever walk away from the Olympics and go, man, but that pedestal? Nobody notices it. Because the leader's job is to lift up people, is to do everything they can do. All your time, effort, thoughts, everything you do is to make those that look up to you better. That's leadership. You want to be on CAB? You want to be on S.G.A? You get obsessed about helping people. That's what those two places do. Whether it's campus activities, and their goal is to create programming that connects a campus, that makes a big campus seem a whole lot smaller with the amazing events, or S.G.A, who's helping the clubs and organizations and everybody on campus and leading, being the voice of students to the fact. Be obsessed with helping people. Okay. Number 3, confidence. A leader must be confident. Now, let me ask you a question. What tells you that somebody is confident? Like, how do you know if somebody is? What do you look for? What do you see? Shay.
Just the way they carry themselves.
Give me an example. What did you say right here?
Oh, good posture.
Their posture. right? From this to keeping shoulders back and standing tall, for sure. Go ahead, Shake.
Another way somebody can exude confidence, by the way that they speak.
By the way,
Somebody's confident in what they're saying. You can tell they speak with intellect.
absolutely, absolutely, good, good. Somebody else, I saw some hands. Yes, right here. A handshake, absolutely. Absolutely. When somebody, especially in a job interview, reaches their hand out to you and you do the dead fish where they grab and there's really nothing there, or you do that little like claw pincher thing like a lobster, just like that, that's creepy. Don't do that. And but what they want to see is when somebody hold their hand and look them in the eyes. That tells them you have confidence, right? Leaders exude confidence. In fact, by the way, this is just a side note because I'm going to reference some books throughout the day that I think all of you should read. I just want to say to you, leaders are readers, period. And I'm going to tell you something real quick. Some of you are like, I don't like to read. I love you enough to say this. Get over it. Get over it. You need to. When I was 24 years old, I read my first book when I was 23 years old. I graduated high school with a 1.9 grade point average. I walked down the aisle with no cords hanging on me, no awards, no nothing, completely in the background and written off as not a leader, bad student. Age 23, I read my first book. Never read a book in high school. Age 24, I decided to go back to school. And one thing I thought was, I need to become a reader. When I walked across the stage of my undergraduate education, I can still hear the voice of our president ringing through the PA of Mike Fritz graduating with highest honors. Not because I'm so good, but because what you did in your past doesn't determine your future. You hear me? Yeah. What you did in your past doesn't determine your future. I don't care how many failed relationships you've had, that doesn't determine the relationships of the future. I don't care how many failed interviews you had. It doesn't determine the interviews of the future. But here's the thing, you got to fight this because your brain tells you this is what happened in the past, so this is probably what will happen in the future. You've got to fight that. You've got to say, no, it's not. That's BS. That's crap in your head. We've got to take that trash out. You know, a lot of times, I don't care if you're living with friends or parents or wherever, you live at home once a week, once every other day, whatever, however much you take the trash out because it begins to stink. We will let trash live in our minds our entire life without walking to the end of the street. And the trash in our minds are your past determines your future. You're going to be as successful as your brother, sister, parent, whatever. You're not going to make. You grew up in a family that struggled with money, so you will. All of those things. The fact that you're here tells me you're on a good trajectory. Just don't stop. Don't let your past determine your future, right? So I read my first book at age 23. When I graduated, I got a master's degree after I got my undergraduate education. And my master's degree, I was having to read about 8,500 pages a semester. My master's degree was 96 credits. Go to most master's degrees are 30. I got 3 master's degrees in one. I read 49 books in my master's program in about a 3-year period. Your past doesn't determine your future. So when I'm telling you, I don't like to read, I say get over it as a joke, but I'm not joking at all. Every book you pick up. So I'll show you this picture. This kind of stuff breaks my heart. I was in a conference in Denver this week, and I walked past these 2 gentlemen that were homeless. These 2 homeless gentlemen. And then a big pile of trash. And on top of that pile of trash was a brand new hardcover book called Willpower Doesn't Work. It's by Benjamin Hardy. I've heard of the book. I've never read it. And here I'm thinking, these 2 people that are struggling, and a book is sitting right next to them that will infuse a ton of information into their hearts and lives. We just don't value it in our world sometimes. And I'm telling you, get reading. And I know right now you've got 40,000 things to read because you're in school, but I'm telling you, make reading a passion. Now, why did I start that story? Because One of the best books on building your confidence is the book Presence by Amy Cuddy. It will teach you. She actually did proof. They did scientific studies. If you stand like this, like in a power pose like this for 2 minutes a day, it will increase your neurological confidence in your brain. Because it tells your body. If I sit like this versus if I sit like this, what does it tell you? Big difference, right? Now, I sit like that sometimes too. I'm not saying that if you sit like that, you're not confident. But what I am saying is this. Amy proved that the way you put your body tells your brain whether something's important or not. So she proved by people doing this for 2 minutes every single day. By the way, it's a great little hack. Set your stopwatch, get up in the morning and do this. Stand in front of a mirror and stare yourself right in the eyes. Stare yourself right in the eyes for 2 minutes. What it does is it begins to increase. I can do this. Confidence changes the game. And you know what confidence builds that very few things do? Is trust. Because imagine you hop into an Uber, and the Uber's like, all right, where are you headed? Airport. Well, this is going to be fun. I've never driven before. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay, so this is where I die. Wonderful. Great. So the point is, when people doubt, it does not really instill trust. But when people are confident, like, guys, I've never done this, but we're going to figure this out. All of a sudden, people are like, okay, he believes, I'm in, right? Okay, so confidence is a huge piece. And so now again, I don't want to go so fast. I'm going to give you guys a ton of content today. The first thing, again, remember, first thing, always be developing. So guys, when you guys grow in these areas, when you become a pretty good public speaker, put something else on the list. Never have a void in your development list, ever. This is not something, Tony Robbins coined the word CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. C-A-N-E-I, CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. The point is, you never stop this cycle of growth, ever. Because when you become when you get married or spend your life with somebody, you're going to really have to work on that relationship. When you have kids or whatever, you're going to have to become a good parent and understand how do you develop a little child's mind. There's so much to grow in, so you'll never stop growing. Number two, make sure you're thinking of others. Always thinking of others. Other people's success. By the way, on the other success, I forgot to say this. I talked about how you can't grow when you're talking. I want you to take, and you don't have to, but I want to encourage you to take the 24-hour challenge. How many of you know somebody that is really good at talking about themselves? And they always bring the story back to themselves. You're like, hey, I got in a car accident this morning. They're like, dude, that reminds me. You know what I mean? It just always comes back to them, right? Let me tell you this. Let me tell you, here's a 24-hour challenge that will change your life. And when I say change your life, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking it will change everything. Here it is, 24 hours. You're not allowed to talk about yourself unless somebody asks. Unless somebody asks you, I mean, I'm not saying, you can answer them, like, how are you doing today? Like, I'm not saying do that, I'm not saying be creepy, but what I am saying is, don't talk unless somebody asks. Because here's what happens. Guys, you want to build a network, this is the fastest and most powerful way to build your network of people. Do nothing but ask them questions. I'll meet somebody. Like, so how'd you decide to come to school here? Oh, well, I grew up here. Great. So what's your major? They'll begin to tell me their major. I said, so what do you really want to do with that? And they'll tell me what they want to do with that. And I'm like, so you kind of think in this direction, or do you want to be like a manager? What's your thoughts on that? They'll begin to tell me. 15, 20 minutes. Then they'll walk away. They know nothing about me. They've never asked me a question about myself. They'll walk away and they'll be going like, man, that guy Mike's awesome. They don't know anything about me. But they do know one thing, that I cared enough to ask them about them. You want to know one way I decide who to let into my inner circle? If they ask me about me. If they don't ask me about me, they don't get in. There's a big barrier around my inner circle, and the way to get in is you have to care about people, and you have to care about me in the same way that I wouldn't expect you to let me into your circle if I didn't care about you. So the fastest way to build your network is just ask people questions about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. Let them. especially in the interview. You want to know, I call it hijacking an interview. You want to know one of the best ways to do an interview? When they start asking you questions, why do you feel like you're great for the job? Well, I wanted to learn a little bit more about the job before I answer that. Tell me about this. What's the biggest problem you have in this role? And all of a sudden, now I'm asking them questions about this job. The biggest problem I have, now watch how I flip this. What's the biggest problem you have in this role? Well, it's really hard to get dependable people that take the job seriously. So you're telling me, then I spit it back to them. You're telling me if somebody showed up every day and took this job seriously and they put 110% in, this would be a win for your company. Absolutely. So tell me another thing. Then they'll tell me this. Then they'll tell me another problem. I'll do the exact same thing. Then I'll answer their question. So what I would say, the reason I'd be a great fit is I always take my job seriously, and I spit back the reason I'm the solution to all their problems. You understand how I just did that? Hijacking an interview and giving the exact answer back to them that their problems are. Because let me tell you, this world, in our world, my biggest pet peeve is when we demonize successful people. When we make successful people that are the problem. Let me tell you something. Successful people got that way because they solved people's problems. Success is built on the problem-solving continuum. Sometimes people look at Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, and he's like, oh, he's just this big rich guy. Do you know that over 1.2 million people depend on him for work? 1.2 million, with an M, employees go to work and come home and feed their families because of that man's brain. So my point in saying that is, let's not demonize the successful. Let's figure out what in the world they did. And I can already tell you, because I've studied them for years. They ask this question: what's the greatest problem people have, and how can I solve it? When you walk into interviews, hijack it and figure out what their greatest problems are. Then when you tell them why you're a great fit for the job, spit back their problems. How you're the solution. It's the whole presence of serving people, right? Is you care about serving people. You want to get a job. People are trying to hire people based on how much they think they will have, how many problems you will solve. So they want a checkout person. Yeah, okay, I just want a checkout person that says hi to people and is kind when people walk through and says, "How are you having a good day? Did you find everything?" I don't need the next president of the United States, but I just need somebody that's really kind to people. That's what they're thinking. Well, you want them to say that in the interview. The whole point is because even interviews are about solving problems. So you think it's about getting them to pick you. It's not. You want them to pick you, forget about you and think about them. Got that? Understand? Other success. Then the third one is confidence. Confidence builds trust. When I know that you're confident in yourself, I'm like, man, I trust her. Or I trust them. I understand that she knows what she's doing. She even if you don't, right? Number 4. This is an old school word. We don't talk about this as much anymore. That's why I do. Integrity. Integrity is incredibly valuable as a leader. In fact, I think today, most of the leaders we see on TV and in campaigns and all this kind of stuff, a lot of them don't do what they say they're going to do, and so it erodes trust, right? Can I tell you one of the things that will erode your trust faster than anything? It's talking about people behind their back. And let me tell you why. If let's say we've got somebody here, and you and I, we've got Sarah, and you and I are talking about Sarah. When you start bringing things up and you're slamming Sarah, guess what? When I'm not there, guess what? I slide into that role. So when you talk to me about somebody else, it completely erodes your trust. Watch this. Somebody starts talking to you about somebody. You want to build credibility fast. They start talking about somebody. Say, you know what? I understand. We've all got issues to grow. Let's not talk about somebody that's not even here to defend themselves. So what are you doing this weekend? Change the subject instantly. It might feel awkward at first, but what you just told me is, I can trust you. I know you're not going to do that when I'm around. And your credibility just shot through the roof. Integrity is a lost art, and I want to bring it back because I feel like people are looking for people that won't cheat on their time cards. They won't say they got there at 4 when they got there at 5. They won't tell you I'm going to be here at 4 and get there at 5. People are looking for people that will keep their word. And you know who the most important person? You know who you should worry about keeping your word to the most? Bingo. How many of you have ever, say, you're sitting there eating nachos and you're like, I'm going to go on a diet tomorrow. Right? You know what I mean? You're like, just one more cheat night and I'm going on a diet, and then tomorrow never comes. You understand that? Any of you ever gone on a diet and then all of a sudden food gets a voice? You know what I mean? Like you just walk past and cinnamon rolls are like, hey, sexy. You know what I mean? It's just like, Like like I get it. Like sometimes, like I actually ended up going on 2 diets. I couldn't get full on one. But my point in saying all that is, I personally, I understand. Because I am that guy that's like, oh, I'm going to get up and exercise tomorrow. Or I'm going to read a book this week. Or I'm going to do it. And then all of a sudden we don't do that. And we begin to trust ourselves less and less. And then we wonder why in tough situations, like S.G.A was talking about, we don't trust ourselves in certain situations. Because we've proven to ourselves we can't based on keeping our commitments to ourselves. You understand that? You won't trust yourself based on all the commitments you've broke to yourself over the years. You want to start trusting your gut? Start keeping your word to yourself. Then your gut's voice a lot louder. You understand that? Okay? Integrity. Keep that word to yourself, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you what, it's so powerful when you say something and it's like, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Absolutely. Integrity. One more. All right, so you know what? Yeah, let's do this for just a second, and then we'll do this, and then you're going to get some food. Can I borrow this for a minute? Yeah, I'm going to bring it back. I'm not like just stealing things. Okay. Let me, Cam. Just throw it over there. Just throw it. Just throw it. All right, good, perfect. Did you hit your target? Bingo. You'll never hit a target until you have one. You'll never reach a goal until it is in front of you all the time. And we live our lives forward, shooting at everything. And when you don't have a target, you'll hit it every time. You'll hit it every time. So today, this guy's over here. I'd like to take notes, you loser. Could you bring back my pen? I got it. So the point is, goals give you something. Goals are what set up your priorities for the day. Remember I talked about your priorities? We've got to have goals. So here's what I want you to do. I like to have 24-hour, 36 weeks, or 90 days, and 12-month goals. 24 hours, 3 months, and 12 months. And here's why. 24 hours, what am I going to do in the next day that is going to specifically get me to my end game? And then what am I going to do in the next 90 days? What am I going to do in the next year? 24 hours, 90 days, year. So here's what you start. You work backwards. Year, I want you to write 3 things you want to accomplish in the next 12 months. Then in the next 90 days, where do you need to be to make sure you're there in 12 months? And then what do you need to do in the next 24 hours to get the ball rolling towards the 90 days? So for example, I want to get a 3.5 this semester or whatever. Okay, so that's a 90-day goal. I want to get a 3.5. What do I need to do in the next 24 hours? Well, I need to really work on this project because it's due. Or maybe I need to meet with 2 of my professors because I really need to talk about the soft spots in my class structure because these are my things I'm not as good at. I need to put a little more effort into. I'm going to go meet with my profs and say, how can I work this? So the whole point is you work backwards. Where do you want to be in 12 months? Then what do you need to be in 90 days? And then the reason I say 90 days is when you're there in 90 days, then you just duplicate it. You do that 90 days 3 times. Boom, boom, boom. That's why you do that. 90 days, 120, 90 days, 180 days, and then so on. So you just duplicate the 90-day cycle. So then, 24 hours. So here's what I want you to do. Once you start at 12 months, what do you want to accomplish in the next year? What do you want to accomplish in the next 12 months? Start there. Give me one. And by the way, never more than 3. You ain't getting more than 3 big dudes done in a year. It just ain't going to happen. There's not enough time. Yale, 1953 in Yale. They did a study. 3% of the graduating class of Yale in 1953 wrote down their goals on paper. They revisited all the graduating class 10 years later, and that 3% had accomplished more than the 97% combined. When you commit your goals to paper, you tell your brain it is absolutely valuable. Now, there's 2 more layers. Once you write them down, then you post them wherever you'll see them every day. And then the third one, which is the hardest one to do, you tell as many people as you can about it. Why would you tell people about it? Keep motivated. You're speaking it, and our words have power, absolutely. They can hold you accountable. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe if your goal is to say, I want to get healthier, I want to lose some weight, or I want to read some books, or I want to do whatever. The point, I want to land an internship, whatever that goal is, So let me tell you, you want to tell people about it, but let me be very clear on this. You be very, and I mean oh so very careful who you tell your goals to. Can I tell you something that's an interesting statistic? Do you know your income when you graduate here, your income, according to so many different studies, will be the average of the 5 people you hang around most? That study's been proven all the time. You want your income to grow? This is what I say as your leader. You want your income to grow? You want anything to grow? Be the dumbest person in every room. Hang out with people that elevate you, not deplete you. So you have to think about your life as a table. You only have 5 seats. These 5 people will determine the greatness of your character, your finances, most likely who you end up with as a partner throughout your life. You only have 5 of these seats. Oh, my friends, make sure that you pick those carefully. Because if you have a contaminant at your table, dropping nasty communication into your brain, like, really, you want to do that? All of a sudden, you begin to doubt it as well. You know, a lot of times, family members aren't at this table. A lot of times, family members know you when you were 3, and they're like, oh, you've always been like that. When people say that, I don't want them to do that. That's what I'm trying to say very graciously. Because I don't care what you were like when you were 3 or what you've been like throughout history. The guy Thomas Edison, you know how many times he failed making the light bulb? Thousands. His past did not determine him keeping going. At least we think it was thousands. He was writing in the dark. Anyway, that's stupid. My point in saying that is, when you have 5 people, like these 5 seats here, you make sure you pick those carefully. You might say, well, I'll go and tell my brothers and sisters or mom and dad or whatever, and maybe those aren't your greatest encouragers. Just keep that stuff in your heart. That's not being a closed book, because here's what I say. You better be a closed book. You just need to be vulnerable to a very few people, and I mean extra vulnerable. They need to know everything about you, because those are the people that really want you to change. So let me tell you something. These 5 people, let me tell you how you pick these 5 people at your table. Number 1, they are not threatened by your success. They don't get threatened when you all of a sudden do something that they don't think they could do. They don't get threatened. They're cheering for you no matter what. Number 2, they challenge you that your goals are far too small. You say, this is what I want to do. Why would you only do that? You're capable of doing 10 times that. They challenge you that your goals are too small. Your goals become their goals. Meaning, when you tell them my goal is to land an internship, they're also thinking about it throughout the week, thinking about you and asking you how it's going and how can they help. They become a part of my warrior team, and you're that for them as well, if you're at their table. So having somebody at your table doesn't necessarily mean that you're at theirs. It can and usually does, but it doesn't always have to. So what you want to do on this is you want to say, okay, who do I really hang out with the most? You start making that list, and you start asking yourself, do I want the average of this reality? Character, revenue. I mean, if I go out and earn it, get a job, and start generating revenue, do I want that to reflect my 5? Guys, I've learned a lot about leadership over the years, and I have learned that every single one of you, there's 3 truths about every single one of you, and I've never met you till today. Number 1, you're far more valuable than you think you are. Number 2, you can do far more than you think you can. And number 3, your fear inside your brain is very real to you, but fear stands for false evidence appearing real. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Psychologists have proved that humans actually only have 2 fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Because you can see a human brain response. When a loud noise happens, we jerk away because our brains are fearful of it, because our danger sensors hit off. And when we fall, because we're not supposed to fall, we're supposed to be upright, our danger centers kind of light up and go off in the brain. We only have 2 real fears. Everything else, garbage. False evidence appearing real. Those are 3 things I know about every single one of you guys in here. When we go in our next session, I'll go even a little bit deeper. But I believe that tomorrow is always a reflection of today's choices. Tomorrow, you're experiencing the reality or the consequence, both good and bad, of today's choice. Do you know you'll walk out of here all excited? You'll get out of here like, man, we learned all this stuff today, and you'll go back to people that weren't there, and they'll be like, what the heck's the big deal? And all of a sudden, your flame that was light just got put out a little bit, and a little bit, until eventually somebody just put your flame out. Can I tell you something real quick? Every single one of us need to reignite that flame in our heart, because let me tell you, when that flame in our heart gets bright enough, it'll start to melt the lead in our feet, and we'll get moving. Hear me? All right, guys, I love you guys. Let's have lunch, and then I'll be back for this afternoon. Thank you guys so much.